There comes a moment in life when pain unexpectedly knocks on our door, an unavoidable moment when everything you once believed about yourself begins to crumble. It feels as if the ground beneath your feet has vanished, and suddenly you find yourself falling into an abyss of uncertainty, emptiness, and confusion. But here's a truth that few are taught. Pain is not your enemy, nor is it a mere coincidence. It is a messenger. Hidden within suffering lies a profound truth, one that has the power to transform your existence forever. Have you ever noticed that the most painful experiences in your life are the ones that have shaped you the most? Take a moment to reflect. Perhaps it was a relationship that ended, a job you lost, or a period of deep solitude that forced you to confront yourself. These experiences, which we often wish to avoid, serve a higher purpose. The Swiss psychologist Carl Jung called this process individuation, a journey inward, where we meet our shadows, confront our fears, and ultimately discover our purest and most authentic self. Most people, when faced with pain, do everything they can to escape it. They seek refuge in distractions, burying themselves in work, scrolling endlessly through social media, drowning in parties, or engaging in anything that numbs their inner discomfort. But Jung revealed something essential. Running from pain only amplifies it. When you ignore the message that suffering is trying to communicate, it returns again and again in different forms, like an endless cycle, until you choose to listen. Imagine that your pain is a voice emerging from the depths of your unconscious. That voice whispers, "Stop, look within. There is something you need to see, something you have ignored for too long." This is not an easy message to hear because it forces us to confront the parts of ourselves that we would rather keep hidden. Jung referred to this hidden part as the shadow, and it is here that the true transformative power of pain resides. The shadow consists of everything we have repressed: our fears, desires, insecurities, and unresolved emotions. It is the part of us that we deny because it does not fit the image we wish to project to the world. However, the more we ignore the shadow, the more power it holds over us. It manifests in our lives as conflicts in relationships, self-sabotaging decisions, or recurring patterns that seem to trap us in the same painful experiences. Have you ever met someone who inexplicably brings out the worst in you? Perhaps that person makes you feel insecure, irritates you, or awakens emotions you don't fully understand. Jung would say that this person is not in your life by accident. They are a mirror, reflecting an aspect of your shadow that you need to acknowledge and integrate. It is as if the universe conspires to show you what you have yet to accept within yourself. Here lies a profound truth that can change your life. The pain you experience is not a punishment. It is a call for transformation. It is your unconscious mind guiding you toward deeper self-awareness. When you stop running, when you choose to face your pain and look within, something extraordinary happens. You begin to free yourself. Facing your shadow is not easy. It requires courage because it means admitting that you are not perfect, that you carry wounds, and that there are aspects of yourself that need healing. But it is in this act of bravery that you discover your true strength. Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." In other words, only when you dare to face your shadow can you truly transform it into light. This process not only liberates you from the weight of pain, but also reconnects you with your authentic self. Because behind every wound, behind every fear, lies a hidden gift, one that offers you a deeper understanding of yourself, a renewed perspective on life, and an inner strength you may not have realized you possessed. For instance, many times, pain arises because we are disconnected from our true essence. We become lost in the expectations imposed by society, a stable job, the perfect relationship, a life that conforms to what others deem acceptable. But the further we drift from our authenticity, the more we feel that inner void. Carl Jung teaches us that the path to wholeness begins the moment we stop seeking external validation and start listening to our inner voice. That quiet, often ignored voice is the compass guiding us toward our true purpose. Yet, in order to hear it, we need silence. We need to pause, to detach from the noise of the outside world, and to ask ourselves the questions we may have long avoided. What parts of myself am I repressing? What do I truly desire in life? What is this pain trying to teach me? Every time you dare to ask these questions, and more importantly, choose to confront the answers, you take a step toward liberation. You begin breaking the invisible chains that bind you to suffering. You open the door to a more authentic, fulfilling, and meaningful existence. Because here is the truth. You cannot heal what you are not willing to face. The moment you start confronting your shadow, when you integrate all those aspects of yourself that you had suppressed or ignored, something astonishing happens. The pain does not magically disappear, but it loses its grip on you. Instead of feeling like a victim of your circumstances, you begin to see every challenge, every loss, and every moment of suffering as an opportunity for transformation. Jung described this as an alchemical process, the art of turning the lead of your suffering into the gold of self-discovery. Think about the most difficult experiences in your life, the ones that shattered you, that forced you to question everything you thought you knew about yourself and the world. Now, reflect. What did those experiences teach you? Perhaps at the time, the pain felt unbearable. But looking back, can you see how those moments made you stronger, wiser, more aware? Jung famously said, "He who looks outside dreams. He who looks inside awakens." This simple yet profound phrase contains one of the most powerful lessons we can learn. Real change does not happen outside of you. It happens within. Most people spend their lives blaming external factors for their suffering. The job, the relationship, the economy, society. But Jung reveals a fundamental truth. The world outside is merely a reflection of our inner world. If there is chaos in your relationships, if you feel an emptiness inside, if you find yourself trapped in the same toxic patterns over and over again, it is because something within you needs to be seen, acknowledged, and healed. For instance, if you repeatedly encounter people who hurt you or disappoint you, it is easy to blame them. But what if you stopped to reflect? What if those people were simply mirrors, revealing parts of yourself that you have refused to see? Your deep need for approval, your fears, your inability to set boundaries. Jung called this projection. We project onto others the things we cannot accept in ourselves. Imagine this. You meet someone who irritates you deeply. You cannot stand their arrogance, their selfishness, or their way of behaving. But if you look closer, you may realize that what bothers you most about them is actually something you have suppressed within yourself. Perhaps deep down, you envy their assertiveness, their strength, or their freedom, but you do not allow yourself to express those qualities. Projection is uncomfortable because it forces us to face our own shadow. Yet, it is also one of the most powerful tools for self-growth. Every person who enters your life does so for a reason. Some come to teach you love. Others come to teach you boundaries. And some come to reveal the hidden parts of yourself that are crying out for healing. Jung believed that nothing happens by chance. The universe, through your relationships and experiences, is constantly showing you the path to transformation. So, when pain knocks at your door, instead of running from it, sit with it, listen to it. Ask yourself, what is this experience trying to show me? What patterns am I repeating? What do I need to let go of in order to grow? These are not easy questions to answer. They require a level of honesty with yourself that can be deeply uncomfortable. But it is in that discomfort where true transformation takes place. Because when you decide to face your shadows, when you choose to see the truth hidden behind your suffering, something incredible happens. You free yourself. You begin to live from a place of authenticity. You stop acting to please others and start acting in alignment with your truth. You let go of the need for external validation and finally find peace within yourself. This is the path that Carl Jung described as individuation, the lifelong process of becoming the person you truly are, beyond the masks, beyond the roles imposed by society, beyond the expectations that have been placed upon you since childhood. It is the journey of self-discovery, the unveiling of your most authentic self. But make no mistake, this path is not easy. There will be moments when you feel lost, when doubt creeps in, whispering that you are not enough. Fear will try to hold you back, convincing you to stay in the comfort of the familiar, even if the familiar suffocates you. You will be tempted to abandon the journey, to retreat into old patterns, to surrender to the illusion that it is safer to conform than to evolve. However, Jung reminds us of a profound truth. Darkness is not the end. It is the beginning. It is the fertile ground where your roots can grow deeper, where the raw and unfiltered parts of yourself can finally be acknowledged and understood. Only when you embrace your shadow, those parts of you that you have rejected, feared, or denied, does something inside you begin to shift permanently. No longer do you feel like a victim of your emotions. No longer are you controlled by external circumstances. Instead, you begin to see pain not as an enemy, but as a teacher. Every wound, every struggle, every heartbreak becomes a guide, leading you to a greater understanding of who you are. This is the essence of Jung's teachings. You cannot reach the light without first passing through the darkness. Jung often spoke of the inner hero, the part of you that has the courage to venture into the unknown, to face your deepest fears, and to emerge transformed. This is the same hero's journey we see in all great stories. The protagonist is thrown into chaos, confronted with trials and suffering, tested beyond their limits. But by the end, they have changed. They have become stronger, wiser, more whole. And that hero is you. Your struggles, your pain, your shadows, they are not punishments. They are the trials you must endure to uncover your true power. But here's something crucial you must understand. Healing is not instant. Integrating your shadow, facing your wounds, and transforming your inner world is not something that happens overnight. It is a process that requires patience, self-compassion, and above all, time. This is not about fixing yourself. You are not broken. It is not about erasing your pain or pretending it never existed. It is about learning to live with it, to make peace with it, to recognize that even the most painful experiences have shaped you into the person you are today. Jung believed that the goal of life was not to attain some unrealistic version of perfection, but to find wholeness. And wholeness means embracing every part of yourself, the good and the bad, the light and the shadow. Think about it. How many times have you felt like you weren't enough simply because you didn't fit into the narrow definition of success and happiness that society imposes? Perhaps you've been taught that you must always be strong, always be positive, always be achieving. But Jung teaches us that true strength does not come from suppressing your flaws. It comes from accepting them. The moment you stop fighting yourself, the moment you stop repressing your emotions, you free yourself. You allow yourself to be real, to be human, to be whole. And this transformation doesn't just affect you. It changes the way you connect with others. When you accept your own shadow, you stop projecting it onto those around you. You no longer judge people solely by their flaws, because you recognize that they too are fighting their own battles. Their fears, their wounds, their struggles are no different from yours. This realization fosters deeper, more authentic relationships built on understanding rather than illusion. But to reach this level of self-awareness, you need courage. The courage to ask yourself difficult questions. What fears am I avoiding? What parts of myself have I been suppressing? Why do I keep repeating the same patterns in my relationships and my life? These questions are uncomfortable. They challenge everything you think you know about yourself. They force you to confront the lies you've been telling yourself, to shed the masks you've worn to fit in, and to dare to show the world who you truly are. And here lies the paradox. Though this process may seem terrifying at first, in the end, you will realize there is nothing more liberating than being yourself. Carl Jung tells us that authenticity is the greatest act of courage. When you allow yourself to be truly authentic, you begin to attract people and experiences that genuinely resonate with you. You no longer feel the need to chase relationships or pursue things that fail to fulfill you. Instead, everything you truly need starts arriving naturally, as if life itself is aligning in response to your inner truth. Jung also speaks about synchronicity, that mysterious phenomenon where events seem to align in an almost magical way. Perhaps you've experienced this before. Right after making an important decision, you start noticing signs, coincidences, or even the sudden appearance of people who seem to arrive at just the right moment. This is not mere chance. It is the universe responding to your authenticity, confirming that you are walking the right path. However, reaching this level of alignment requires something fundamental: letting go of control. You must learn to trust the process, even when it is painful. Even when the road ahead seems uncertain, everything is unfolding for your highest good. The pain you feel today is not the end of your story. It is merely the beginning of your transformation. Jung leaves us with a powerful lesson. Pain does not come to destroy you, but to awaken you. It is a call from your soul, urging you to look within, to acknowledge your shadows, and to discover the light that has always been there. Because behind every wound, there is a hidden gift. Behind every fear, there is an opportunity for growth. And behind every shadow, there is a part of you longing to be seen, loved, and accepted. When you embark on this journey of self-discovery, you realize that pain and darkness were never the real problems. The real issue was your resistance to facing them. Jung famously said, "What you resist persists. What you accept transforms you." In other words, the more you suppress your fears, wounds, or desires, the more power they have over your life. But the moment you choose to confront them, to face them with awareness and acceptance, you reclaim your power. Have you ever felt trapped in an endless cycle where the same problems and patterns keep repeating over and over again? Maybe it's a relationship that always ends the same way, or a job where you never feel truly valued. Jung would say that this is not a coincidence. It is your unconscious mind trying to get your attention. Every recurring pattern is a sign that there is something within you that remains unrecognized or unhealed. For example, imagine that you continuously attract people who make you feel inadequate or unworthy. It's easy to blame others, but Jung invites us to look deeper. What part of yourself believes that you are not enough? What past wounds or limiting beliefs are you projecting onto your relationships? When you begin to ask yourself these questions, you start to understand a profound truth. Change does not happen outside of you. It happens within. Because once you heal those inner wounds, everything around you starts to shift. This is the true power of self-awareness. The relationships that once caused you pain stop affecting you because you no longer project your unresolved shadows onto them. The situations that once triggered fear or anxiety lose their grip on you because you have discovered strength within yourself. But this process does not happen overnight. It is a journey, and like any journey, there will be moments when you feel lost, confused, or even tempted to give up. However, Jung reminds us that it is in the deepest darkness that we find the greatest light. It is in the moments of greatest chaos that we discover our true strength. Think about it. How many times have you overcome something you once thought was impossible? Perhaps at the time, it felt like you couldn't go on, that the pain was too overwhelming. And yet, here you are. You survived. And not only did you survive, but you learned, you grew, and you became stronger. That is proof that within you lies an incredible power, a power that often goes unrecognized until life forces you to uncover it. Carl Jung called it the self, the center of your being, the core of who you are in your purest and most complete form. The self is not just your personality, not the image you project to the world, nor the roles you play to fit in. It is something deeper, something untouched by fear, doubt, or societal expectations. It is the essence of your true nature, beyond the layers of conditioning and beyond the masks you wear to navigate life. At its core, the self is your connection to something far greater than your individual existence. It is your link to the universe, to the infinite intelligence that orchestrates all of life. But to find this center, to reconnect with who you truly are, you must undertake a task that few are willing to face. You must learn to let go. Letting go is not merely an act of abandonment or surrender. It is an act of profound self-love. It requires releasing the beliefs that limit you, the relationships that drain your energy, and the versions of yourself that no longer serve your highest good. This is not a sign of weakness. It is a courageous step toward transformation. When you let go of what no longer belongs in your life, you create space for something new, something better, to emerge. Think of it as tending to a garden. If you never remove the dead branches, there will be no room for new flowers to bloom. In the same way, when you choose to release what no longer resonates with you, you send a powerful message to the universe. I am ready for something greater. And the universe always responds. Suddenly, new people, new opportunities, and new experiences begin to enter your life as if by magic. Doors that once seemed permanently shut begin to open, effortlessly. However, this journey is not without its challenges. There will be moments of doubt, times when fear whispers in your ear, trying to pull you back into your comfort zone. But remember this, fear is not your enemy. It is merely a sign that you are growing, evolving, stepping into the unknown. And it is in the unknown where true miracles take place. Carl Jung taught us that the greatest act of courage is to be true to yourself. This means shedding the expectations imposed upon you, releasing the old narratives that have confined you, and embracing the path of authenticity. When you do this, you begin to live a life that is truly your own, a life where you feel at peace, aligned with your purpose, and deeply connected to your truth. Pain, though often feared, carries with it a hidden gift. It offers you the chance to transform, to free yourself from illusions, and to discover the depths of who you really are. In the end, life is not about avoiding suffering. It is about finding meaning within it. When you shift your perspective in this way, pain ceases to be your enemy and instead becomes your greatest ally. The moment you stop running from your shadows, the instant you choose to walk through your pain rather than around it, the world begins to look different. The things that once controlled you lose their power. The relationships that once wounded you no longer hold the same weight. And most importantly, you come to realize that every experience, even the most difficult, had a purpose. Because in the grand design of life, nothing is ever wasted. Every challenge, every heartbreak, every moment of struggle is simply a doorway leading you back home to yourself. Carl Jung teaches us that life is a continuous process of transformation. It is not about finding absolute answers or achieving a perfect version of yourself, but rather about embracing the journey of growth, learning, and evolution every single day. Every challenge you face and every person you meet is an opportunity to discover new aspects of yourself, to integrate your shadow, and to unleash your inner light. But what happens when you truly commit to this inner work? You become an authentic, strong, and conscious individual. You stop living on autopilot and start making decisions based on your true essence. The right people begin to enter your life. Opportunities start aligning effortlessly, and most importantly, you finally find the peace you have been searching for. Because true fulfillment is not found outside of you. It has always been within. This message is not just for you. It is for everyone who is walking the path of self-discovery. We live in a world that has taught us to run away from pain, to suppress our emotions, and to disconnect from our true selves. But now is the time to wake up. Now is the time to turn inward, to embrace our shadows, and to transform our suffering into strength. Because when you transform yourself, you transform the world around you. I invite you to pause for a moment and reflect. Ask yourself, what part of my life am I ready to change? What relationships, fears, or beliefs do I need to let go of to set myself free? What lessons can I learn from the pain I am experiencing right now? Take a moment to write down your answers. Reflect on them deeply. Change does not happen overnight, but it begins with a single decision. The decision to listen to yourself, to face yourself, and to liberate yourself. Carl Jung once said that those who do not look within will never awaken. So today, I invite you to wake up, to take that first step toward your transformation, to become the person you were always meant to be. You are part of something much greater than yourself. This message is not just for you, it is for anyone who needs to hear it. If these words resonated with you, if you feel that someone else could benefit from this message, share it. Maybe there is someone out there going through a difficult time, someone who needs this exact sign, this small push to start their own journey of transformation. Leave a comment below and tell me, what part of this message touched your heart? What change are you willing to make in your life today? Your words will not only help you, but will also inspire others who are reading. Together, we can create a community where knowledge, authenticity, and transformation become our greatest strength. And before you leave, make sure to subscribe to this channel. If you've come this far, it's because something inside you is ready to awaken. Don't let this be just another video. Let it be the beginning of something greater in your life. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new video. Each video we share is designed to help you grow, evolve, and awaken to your highest potential. Every time you share, comment, or interact with this content, you are helping this message reach more people. People who need to wake up and begin their path of self-discovery. You can be that light that inspires others to change their lives. Remember, life is not about avoiding darkness, but about learning to walk through it and discovering your own light in the process. Pain is not your enemy. It is your teacher. Listen to it, face it, and let it guide you toward your transformation. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for being part of this journey. Subscribe now, and let's continue growing together. I will see you in the next video. And always remember, change begins with you. I'll be waiting for you.
Have you ever stopped to observe that voice that constantly speaks within your mind? That internal dialogue that seems to define who you are, dictate your decisions, and in many cases, act as an incessant judge of your actions? Carl Jung, one of the most influential psychologists of the 20th century, deeply explored the relationship between this inner voice and our true identity, revealing that what we believe ourselves to be is often nothing more than an illusion created by our psyche. According to Jung, the human mind is composed of multiple layers, and at its deepest core lies the authentic self, an entity that transcends the ego and the masks we wear in our daily lives. That inner voice to which many of us cling as a reflection of identity is not truly us, but rather a construction of the ego, a mechanism that Jung described as necessary yet limiting. So, if that mental chatter is not really you, then who are you? From Jung's perspective, the ego acts as a bridge between our consciousness and the external world, shaped by our experiences, beliefs, and traumas. However, this bridge often turns into a wall that separates us from our true essence. That relentless inner dialogue reflects the fears, judgments, and expectations we have accumulated throughout our lives, but does not necessarily represent our authentic nature. Jung argued that one of the first steps toward true self-understanding is recognizing that this inner voice is only a part of us, not the entirety of who we are. To illustrate this, he used the concept of the shadow, a part of our psyche that contains aspects of ourselves that we prefer to ignore or repress. Many times, that internal voice is a projection of this shadow, filled with thoughts we do not dare to face. For instance, imagine that this inner voice constantly tells you that you are not good enough. Where does this thought come from? Is it a belief you adopted due to past experiences? Or is it the echo of social expectations that have conditioned you? Jung invites us to observe these thoughts from a higher perspective, allowing the true essence hidden behind a mental noise to emerge. Jung believed that the purpose of life is not merely to accumulate achievements or avoid suffering, but to embark on a journey of individuation. This concept involves integrating all parts of our psyche, including those we have ignored or feared, to become a whole being. Mental chatter, though often irritating, can be a valuable tool in this process. It acts as a compass, pointing to the areas of our lives that need attention and healing. For example, if that voice constantly reminds you of your past mistakes, Jung would suggest exploring the root of that guilt. What lessons can be drawn from it? How can you integrate this experience instead of suppressing it? This approach not only deactivates the power of the ego, but also brings you closer to your true self. Mental chatter is not merely an annoyance. It is a reflection of our fragmented psyche. Jung saw in this inner dialogue an opportunity for growth. Every negative thought, every harsh judgment that passes through our mind is an invitation to look inward and question its origin. Many times, these thoughts are deeply rooted in childhood experiences, interactions with authority figures, or traumas we have repressed. But what happens when we stop identifying with them? Jung maintained that much of human suffering stems from identification with the ego. That inner voice feeds on our fears and limitations, creating a constant narrative of what we should be, how we should act, and how others perceive us. However, when we take a step back and observe that mental chatter, as if we were an external witness, something shifts. We realize that we are not those thoughts. We are the observer behind them. A common example can illustrate this. Imagine making a mistake at work, and your mind immediately starts punishing you with phrases like, "You're a failure," or "You'll never be good enough." According to Jung, these words do not come from your authentic essence, but from a mental construct designed to protect you. It aims to shield you from pain or rejection, yet paradoxically, it keeps you trapped in them. By observing these thoughts instead of reacting to them, you begin to dismantle their power. This process requires courage because looking inward means confronting what we have avoided for so long. Jung spoke of the journey to the underworld, a metaphor for facing our shadows. On this journey, we encounter parts of ourselves that we have rejected, but that hold immense potential to transform us. The shadow, according to Jung, is not inherently evil. It is simply the unknown, the forgotten, the repressed. For example, someone who suppresses their creativity out of fear of failure may discover that their mental chatter constantly tells them they are not talented enough. This voice is nothing more than projection of a deeper fear, the fear of being vulnerable, of exposing themselves and being judged. By facing this fear and integrating their creative shadow, this person not only overcomes limitations, but also reconnects with a vital part of their being. The ego, with its need for control, creates an illusion of separation. It makes us believe that we are disconnected from others, from nature, and most importantly, from ourselves. But Jung argued that at our deepest core, we are all connected to what he called the collective unconscious. This is a universal reservoir of archetypes, symbols, and shared experiences of humanity. When we manage to silence our mental chatter and connect with this deeper dimension of our psyche, we gain access to wisdom that transcends our individual experiences. Imagine it this way. That voice telling you that you can't do it is nothing more than an echo of collective fears passed down through generations. But when you choose to connect with the collective unconscious from a place of self-awareness, you can transform those echoes into creative energy and purpose. It is an act of liberation, a step toward a more authentic life. As we progress on this journey of self-knowledge, it is crucial to understand that mental chatter does not disappear overnight. The ego is not something we can completely eradicate, nor is it necessary to do so. Jung insisted that the ego has a purpose. It is a tool that allows us to interact with the physical world. However, its power must be balanced by the authentic self, our deepest essence. The integration of the ego and the self is a fundamental step in the journey toward individuation. This means accepting the parts of our psyche that we have rejected or ignored without judgment. For example, the insecurity that constantly fuels our mental chatter may seem like a flaw, but when we examine it closely, we may discover that it serves a purpose. Perhaps it pushes us to be more careful, to prepare better, or to reflect before acting. Instead of fighting these emotions, Jung invites us to understand them and allow them to have their rightful place within us. One practical exercise to dismantle the influence of mental chatter is what Jung called acts of conscious reflection. This involves taking a recurring thought like, "I am not enough," and asking yourself, where does this thought come from? Is it truly mine, or did I adopt it from my environment? This simple act of reflection creates a space between you and your thoughts, allowing you to observe them without being dominated by them. Imagine a turbulent river. If you're inside the river, struggling against the current, everything seems chaotic and out of control. But if you step out and observe from the riverbank, you realize it is merely a flow of water, something you can watch without being swept away. This is how conscious reflection works. It allows you to step out of the constant stream of thoughts and see them for what they really are, just a part of your experience, not your entire identity. In this process, the unconscious plays a crucial role. Jung described the unconscious as a vast ocean of images, emotions, and symbols that influence our daily lives, often without us realizing it. Mental chatter, in many cases, is a manifestation of this unconscious trying to communicate with our consciousness. Dreams, for example, are one way the unconscious expresses itself, and Jung believed that paying attention to them could help us better understand our mental chatter. Imagine dreaming of being trapped in a room with no exit, a common metaphor reflecting the feeling of being stuck in limiting thought patterns. Jung would suggest exploring this dream as an opportunity to understand which aspects of your life or psyche feel confined. By bringing this understanding to consciousness, you could begin to work on freeing yourself from these restrictions. Confronting and understanding these deep aspects of our psyche not only liberates us from the ego's influence, but also connects us with greater force, the collective unconscious. Jung believed that by overcoming the limitations of our mental chatter, we start to experience a sense of unity with something larger than ourselves. This connection provides a sense of purpose and meaning that the ego can never offer. When we begin to experience this deeper connection with our psyche and the collective unconscious, something extraordinary happens. We stop perceiving ourselves as isolated individuals and start understanding our interconnection with everything around us. This realization not only changes our internal perception, but also transforms how we relate to others and the world at large. Unchecked mental chatter reinforces separation. It makes us believe we are different, alone in our struggles, and that our problems are unique. But Jung taught that by connecting with the collective unconscious, we can see that the worries, fears, and desires we experience are shared by all of humanity. This recognition fills us with compassion, not only for others, but also for ourselves. An example of this occurs in interpersonal relationships. Often, our mental chatter tells us things like, "I'm not enough for this person," or "they don't understand me." According to Jung, these ideas are projections of the ego. The ego, fearful of rejection, creates these narratives to protect itself. But in reality, they build barriers between us and others. By recognizing these projections for what they are, we can begin to dismantle them. For instance, during an argument with someone close, our mental chatter might urge us to defend ourselves, justify our actions, or even attack the other person to protect our pride. But if we pause and observe what is truly happening, we may discover that this reaction stems from an internal wound that has nothing to do with the present situation. This perspective allows us to respond from a place of balance and empathy instead of reacting from the ego. Jung also spoke about the power of synchronicity, those seemingly random events that, nonetheless, appear to hold deep significance in our lives. These synchronicities are a way in which the collective unconscious guides us and connects us with our purpose. For example, you might be struggling with an important decision, and suddenly someone mentions a book, an idea, or an experience that deeply resonates with you. According to Jung, this is not mere coincidence, but a sign that you are aligning with something greater. When we learn to trust these synchronicities, we begin to step out of the rigid control of the ego and open ourselves to fluidity of life. This does not mean abandoning conscious decision-making, but rather allowing our intuition and connection with the unconscious to guide us. This balance between control and surrender is one of the most transformative aspects of the individuation process. However, it is not an easy path. Jung warned that facing our shadows, dismantling the ego, and connecting with the collective unconscious requires courage and perseverance. It is an ongoing process that demands constant self-observation, questioning our beliefs, and being willing to change. But the rewards are immense: greater inner peace, more authentic relationships, and a life filled with purpose and meaning. A practical exercise to deepen this process is introspective journaling. Dedicate a few minutes each day to writing about the thoughts and emotions that surface throughout the day. Do not censor yourself or try to make your words perfect. Simply let your feelings flow. This act of writing allows you to observe your mental dialogue from an external perspective, identifying patterns and beliefs that may be limiting you. For instance, if you frequently write about feeling inadequate, you can reflect on where that belief originated. Was it something you heard as a child? Is it rooted in comparison with others? By exploring these questions, you not only begin to deactivate the influence of the ego, but also move closer to your true self. When we integrate Jung's concepts into our daily lives, we realize that they not only transform our internal perception, but also have a direct impact on our actions and decisions. By connecting with our authentic self, we start operating from a place of greater clarity and authenticity, which positively influences our relationships, our work, and the way we approach challenges. The collective unconscious, according to Jung, is an inexhaustible source of wisdom. It contains archetypes, universal patterns of behavior and experience that we all share. By understanding and working with these archetypes, we can unlock aspects of ourselves that were previously hidden. For example, the hero archetype can help us overcome difficult moments by reminding us of our resilience and courage. The sage archetype, on the other hand, connects us with our intuition and guides us toward more conscious decisions. To apply these concepts, it is useful to pay attention to the images and symbols that appear in our dreams, as they are one of the clearest ways in which the collective unconscious communicates with us. If you dream, for instance, of a dark forest, this could symbolize a journey into the unknown, an opportunity to explore aspects of yourself that you have been avoiding. By reflecting on these symbols, you can uncover profound lessons that help you grow and evolve. Another fundamental aspect of Jung's work is the importance of self-acceptance. Our mental dialogue often tells us that we are not good enough, that we should be different, or that we need to meet certain expectations to be valued. But Jung argued that true growth begins when we accept all parts of ourselves, even those we consider negative. This act of acceptance does not mean resignation, but integration. When we accept our shadows, we stop fighting against them and begin to use them as sources of energy and transformation. A practical example of this is when we face emotions such as anger or fear. Instead of repressing or ignoring them, Jung invites us to explore them. What are they telling us? What present need or desire are they revealing? By approaching these emotions with curiosity rather than judgment, we can transform them into tools for self-understanding and growth. As we progress on this path, we also begin to notice changes in our relationships. When we operate from the ego, our interactions are often marked by defensiveness, judgment, and the need for validation. However, when we connect with our authentic self, these dynamics shift. Instead of seeking approval from others, we become more comfortable with vulnerability and authenticity. This not only strengthens our relationships, but also allows us to attract people and experiences that align with our true essence. For example, in a discussion with a friend or partner, rather than reacting defensively, we can pause and reflect on what is really happening. Are we projecting our insecurities onto the other person? Are we interpreting their words through the filter of our inner dialogue? By approaching the situation from this level of awareness, we can respond with empathy and understanding instead of perpetuating unnecessary conflicts. Ultimately, Jung reminds us that this process is neither linear nor immediate. There will be moments of progress and moments of setbacks, and that is perfectly fine. The important thing is to remain committed to our journey of self-discovery, remembering that each step, no matter how small, brings us closer to our authentic essence. One exercise that can help maintain this commitment is daily visualization. Spend a few minutes each morning imagining how you want to feel and act throughout the day. Don't focus on external results, like achieving a specific goal, but rather on your internal state, peace, authenticity, confidence. This practice not only helps align your actions with your true self, but also strengthens your connection to the collective unconscious. The integration of shadows and working with archetypes are fundamental tools in Jung's approach to long-term transformation. By adopting this practice as a continuous commitment, we begin to experience profound changes in how we face our emotions, make decisions, and relate to the world. When we work with our shadows, we do more than just confront repressed aspects of our psyche. We also learn to unlock the power and energy they contain. Emotions that we typically avoid, such as anger, fear, or sadness, do not simply disappear when ignored. Instead, they find other ways to manifest, often causing internal conflicts or issues in our relationships. Jung believed that by bringing these emotions into the light, we could transform them into sources of strength and wisdom. For example, Someone who constantly suppresses their fear may develop chronic anxiety or feel paralyzed when facing challenges. However, by exploring that fear, by allowing it to exist and be expressed, this person may realize that fear is not the enemy but a signal that something needs attention. Perhaps the fear is pointing to a personal boundary that has been ignored or an unmet need. By integrating this emotion, fear becomes a guide rather than an obstacle. Archetypes, on the other hand, offer universal models that help us understand and navigate our experiences. When facing a challenge, we can call upon the archetype of the hero to inspire us and find the courage needed to move forward. When we seek introspection, we can invoke the archetype of the sage to connect with our intuition and search for deeper answers. A practical way to work with archetypes is to visualize how they influence our daily decisions. Imagine facing a conflict at work. If you react from the ego, you might feel offended, anxious, or compelled to prove your worth. However, if you connect with the archetype of the sovereign, which represents leadership and balance, you can approach the situation calmly, making decisions that benefit both yourself and others. This shift in perspective not only resolves a conflict more effectively, but also strengthens you emotionally. The daily practice of integrating our shadows and working with archetypes does more than transform our inner perception. It also helps us develop a healthier relationship with the collective unconscious. As we do this, we begin to notice patterns and synchronicities in our lives that previously went unnoticed. These experiences serve as reminders that we are not alone, that we are part of something much greater than ourselves. For example, you might find that whenever you face a challenge, unexpected help appears, whether through a meaningful conversation, a book arriving at just the right moment, or a spontaneous new opportunity. Jung saw these synchronicities as evidence that we are aligning with our purpose and connecting with the universal forces that guide our lives. To cultivate this connection, he recommended practices such as meditation, introspective writing, and the mindful observation of our emotions and thoughts. A simple yet powerful meditation involves sitting in silence, closing your eyes, and observing your mental chatter without judgment. Let your thoughts flow like clouds in the sky, recognizing that you are not your thoughts. You are the observer behind them. This exercise not only calms the mind, but also strengthens your ability to live from your authentic self. Consistency is key on this path. Each day, every reflection, and every moment of introspection brings you closer to integrating your psyche. As you progress, you'll notice that your mental chatter loses its grip, and you feel more connected to an inner sense of peace and purpose. This transformation doesn't just impact your own life, it also influences those around you. By living from your true essence, you emanate an energy that inspires and uplifts others. The internal transformation that occurs when we integrate our shadows and connect with archetypes not only shifts our personal perception, but also reshapes our relationships and major life decisions. When we start living from our authentic self, we stop acting impulsively from the ego and instead respond with authenticity and connection. In relationships, this transformation manifests as greater empathy, understanding, and patience. Often, the ego leads us to see others as threats, competitors, or sources of validation. But when we operate from our true essence, we recognize that the people we interact with are also dealing with their own shadows and inner struggles. This understanding allows us to let go of judgment and instead offer support and compassion. For example, if someone close to you criticizes or judges you, your mental chatter might react defensively. They have no right to say that. Or who do they think they are? However, if you pause for a moment and ask yourself what is motivating their behavior, you might realize they're projecting their own fears or insecurities. This simple shift in perspective can prevent conflicts and create space for a more meaningful conversation. Jung also emphasized that the inner work we do with our shadows and archetypes not only benefits our relationships, but also enhances our ability to make important decisions. When we are trapped in mental chatter, our choices are often driven by fear, anxiety, or the need to meet external expectations. However, by connecting with our essence, we begin to make decisions from a place of clarity and purpose. For example, if you are considering a significant change in your life, such as a new job or move, the ego might flood you with thoughts like, what if I fail? What will others think? Or, I'm not ready for this. These thoughts, although they seem protective, are actually attempts by the ego to keep you within your comfort zone. By observing them without identifying with them, you can focus on what you truly desire and make decisions aligned with your values and aspirations. A useful technique in these moments is to visualize the desired outcome from the perspective of your authentic self. Close your eyes and imagine how you would feel if you had already made that decision and everything was flowing harmoniously. Instead of focusing on possible obstacles, center your attention on the sense of fulfillment and satisfaction that this choice could bring. This exercise not only strengthens your confidence, but also helps you attune to the collective unconscious, opening space for synchronicities to support you on your path. As these practices become part of your daily life, you will notice that mental chatter loses its intensity. This does not mean it will disappear completely, but its influence will diminish. Each time you choose to observe your thoughts instead of reacting to them, you strengthen connection with your true essence. This gradual process deeply transforms your perception of yourself and the world. The impact of this transformation is not limited to your personal experience. Jung stated that when we work on our individuation, we contribute to the growth of collective consciousness. By living from our authentic essence, we become examples for others, inspiring them. This is one of the most powerful ways we can influence the world, not through control or imposition, but through our own example. Finally, remember that this journey has no final destination. Individuation is a continuous process, a dance between the ego, the unconscious, and the self that accompanies us throughout life. Every challenge, every emotion, every thought is an opportunity to learn and grow. As long as you remain committed to your practice, you will notice that your life becomes filled with greater clarity, purpose, and connection. As we move forward on this path of self-knowledge and integration, it is crucial to remember that the process is not linear. There will be days when you feel clarity and a deep connection with your true essence, and others when the noise of mental chatter becomes overwhelming. However, every step, no matter how small, is a victory. Each moment of reflection, each act of conscious observation, brings you closer to living from your authentic self and further from the limitations of ego. The constant practice of integrating your shadows and working with archetypes not only transforms your life, but also has a profound impact on those around you. By living from your essence, you inspire others to do the same. This ripple effect is one of the most valuable contributions we can offer to the world. Carl Jung believed that by working on our own individuation, we are also contributing to the collective awakening of humanity. Imagine the power of a conscious community, where people relate not from their egos, but from their authenticity and purpose. This is not just an ideal, but a real possibility when we share and apply these principles in our lives. Every reflection, every practice, and every step toward full awareness benefits not only our own lives, but also transforms the dynamics of our relationships, our communities, and eventually the world. And this is where I want to invite you to take action. If anything you've heard or read here resonated with you, if you feel this message could be valuable to someone else, share it. Perhaps you know someone struggling with their inner dialogue, feeling trapped by the limitations of their ego, and needing to hear that there's a path to inner freedom. By sharing this content, you are not only helping that person, but also contributing to the collective awakening we so desperately need. Additionally, I would love for you to join this conversation. Leave a comment sharing your thoughts, experiences, or questions. What does your inner voice tell you? How do you plan to start deactivating its control over your life? Your experience could be the spark that inspires others to begin their own journey. Together, we can create a community where learning, reflection, and mutual support serve as the foundation for continuous growth. If this message helped you, I invite you to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Every week, I share reflections, practical tools, and concepts like the ones you've heard here, designed to help you connect with your authentic essence and live a purposeful life. By subscribing, you won't just receive content that can transform your life, but you'll also become part of a network of people committed to their personal and spiritual growth. Finally, I want to thank you for making it this far. It is no coincidence that you are reading or listening to these words. Something within you led you to this moment. This is only the beginning of a journey with the potential to change everything for you. Now, you have the opportunity to take action, to apply the tools you've learned in your daily life. And most importantly, to share this message with others so that together we can build a more conscious, connected, and authentic world. I look forward to seeing you in the comments. And remember, by expanding your awareness and living from your true self, you are creating an impact that goes beyond your own experiences. You are part of this change, and every action matters. Share, reflect, engage, and transform. The world needs more of what only you can offer.
Many people believe their thoughts are always right, that whatever their mind tells them must be true. They trust that inner voice as if it were a wise guide. But often, that voice doesn't lead them forward. It traps them. It recalls mistakes, repeats fears, and anticipates failure before anything even happens. I, Carl Jung, witnessed countless individuals fail, not because they lacked talent, but because they obeyed an untrained mind, a mind terrified of change, desperate for safety, clinging to what is familiar even when it destroys them. That mind isn't your enemy by nature. It becomes your enemy when it governs you. You don't need to silence it. You must guide it, re-educate it, and master it. Once you learn to lead your inner dialogue, everything transforms. Doubt fades, focus strengthens, and action flows naturally. The mind was never designed to destroy you. It was designed to serve you. Yet it needs leadership, and that leader must be you. The first step to stop being a victim of your thoughts is to accept a powerful, uncomfortable truth. Your mind doesn't seek your success. It seeks your survival. And to keep you safe, it avoids anything that smells like risk, change, effort, or uncertainty. It convinces you that postponing is wiser than failing, that settling is safer than risking, and that if success doesn't come easily, it wasn't meant for you. That voice that sounds logical is not wisdom. It is fear disguised as reason. Since childhood, your mind has been collecting data, words, emotions, memories, without discernment. Every painful, embarrassing, or rejecting moment became a mental alarm, a silent defense system. Each time you attempt something new or ambitious, that system activates. It triggers doubts, recalls past mistakes, and invents distractions. Not because it wants you to fail, but because it believes that the familiar, even if it hurts, is safer than the unknown. That's why you can't blindly trust your thoughts. Your mind has been programmed by experiences that no longer reflect who you truly are. Until you rewrite that code, you'll keep responding from outdated patterns, like obsolete software, reacting with fear to situations that demand courage, rejecting progress that could free you, doubting when life calls you to act. From my perspective, this struggle is not a flaw. It's part of individuation, the process of becoming whole. It means integrating the unconscious, confronting your inner archetypes and shadows, and learning to use the psyche's energy consciously. Complexes shape behavior when they remain unexamined. They control you from the dark. But when you face them through self-observation, dream work, and symbolic reflection, you turn instinctive reactions into conscious decisions. The true inner leader doesn't suppress your fears or desires. It integrates them, giving them a higher purpose. The greatest illusion is believing you are your thoughts. You are not your mind. You are the awareness observing it. If you can observe it, you can question it. And if you can question it, you can transform it. That voice that once said, "You can't," can be taught to say, "Advance, persist, decide." But it won't change on its own. It requires training. And that training begins with one radical decision. Stop obeying every thought uncritically. When a limiting idea appears, don't feed it. Pause, write it down, read it aloud, and ask, "Is this true?" Does this serve me? Does it reflect who I choose to be? If you don't question it, that thought will become an action, and that action will become identity. Your mind can be your greatest prison or your greatest tool. The difference lies in who commands, it or you. If you don't direct your mind, it will direct you back to the same patterns. Repeat this until it sinks in. My mind does not command me, I train it. Repeat it often, because the greatest battle of your life is not against the world. It's within you. It's fought between your ears and won every day with the thoughts you choose not to obey. The second step to mastering your mind is breaking the autopilot that rules most of your days. You might believe you're making conscious choices, but over 90% of your emotions and actions come from programs installed long before you were aware of them. You live reacting, not choosing. You wake up with the same inner dialogue as yesterday, think the same thoughts, feel the same emotions, act the same way, and yet expect different results. That isn't freedom, that's programming. The subconscious is immensely powerful, but it's obedient. It mirrors what you feed it. If you feed it doubt, complaints, and excuses, that is what it multiplies. But if you feed it structure, clarity, and intention, it will create the same. The problem is that most people never examine their own inner system. They don't question why they procrastinate right before succeeding, why they self-sabotage when things go well. The answer is simple. They are trapped in an old script they forgot they wrote. That automatic script will always pull you back toward what's familiar, because that's where your mind feels safe. And here lies the hard truth. Your patterns don't seek happiness. They seek familiarity. They would rather keep you comfortably miserable than risk uncertain growth. And the only way to break that cycle is through ruthless, repeated awareness. Begin by observing your patterns, because the moment you can see them, you can finally choose to transcend them. What do you do when you're tired? When you face rejection? When you're about to achieve something significant? What kinds of thoughts pop up? What habits follow? Write them down. Expose them. Because what you don't observe, you can't change, and the mind can't hide when you decide to illuminate it. Every time you interrupt a pattern, no matter how small, you send a new signal to your subconscious, a signal that says, we are no longer that person. Now we choose. And that repeated choice begins to forge a new path, a new mental route. At first, it feels uncomfortable, even false. But if you persist, it transforms everything. Do this every day. When you notice yourself acting on autopilot, stop. Breathe. Ask yourself, does this bring me closer to or further from the person I want to be? If the answer is, it takes me further away, choose differently. Even if it feels strange, even if your mind screams that it doesn't make sense, do it anyway. Because every time you break the pattern, you reclaim your power. And that accumulated power is what shapes a new identity. Your mind will resist, but that resistance is sacred. It's the sign that something old is dying and something new is being born. Don't back down. Don't ask your past for permission. Don't wait until you feel ready. Simply interrupt the pattern, choose again, repeat. Because every conscious choice is an act of leadership, and the leader your mind needs is you. Mastering the mind begins when you learn to observe your thoughts without becoming them. What truly imprisons you is not what you think, but what you believe those thoughts mean about you. Every time an inner voice tells you, you're not enough, you've failed, or this isn't for you, you don't just hear it, you believe it, you identify with it. And that's where defeat begins, not in the external world, but in that invisible moment when you mistake a thought for your identity. But you are not your mind. You are the one who can witness what your mind says. And that subtle shift from identification to observation is one of the most powerful keys to inner freedom. Because once you can see your thoughts as passing events, like clouds in the sky, like echoes of old conditioning, you stop obeying them. You begin to see them as signs, not pronouncements, as old echoes, not truths, as inner opinions, not commands. The problem is that no one taught us to look inward. We learned to react, to defend ourselves, to treat every negative thought as a threat that must be controlled or silenced. But your mind doesn't need you to fight it. It needs you to observe it, to listen to it without submitting, to observe it as you would observe a frightened child, with compassion, without anger or judgment, but also without letting it take control. Do this now. Think about the thought that holds you back the most. Perhaps it's a doubt that arises every time you try something new. Perhaps it's a phrase from your childhood that you still repeat as if it were a law. Now observe it from the outside. Ask yourself, is it true? Has it always been true? Where does it come from? And if I didn't believe it, what would I do today? This simple act, practiced consistently, weakens your emotional connection to the lie. Because what limits you is not the thought itself, but your attachment to it. The mind is not mastered by force, but with clarity, space, and daily mindfulness. Dedicate a few minutes each day to sitting in silence and simply observing what arises. Don't react. Don't comment. Just observe. At first, it will feel uncomfortable, even pointless. But little by little, you will begin to notice a distance between you and your mind. And in that distance lies your freedom. Because only those who can observe their mind without merging with it can redirect their lives without being prisoners of the past. Remember this: thoughts come and go, but you decide which ones stay. You decide which ones you give voice to, which ones you shape, which ones you empower. And that decision, however insignificant it may seem, is what distinguishes those who react from those who lead. You don't need a perfect mind. You only need to become the observer who refuses to be swept away by it. And each time you do, your inner strength grows, your focus sharpens, and your mind, little by little, begins to respect you, because it has found something more powerful than the habit of obedience, the power to choose. The fourth step to mastering your mind is to turn intention into structure, because wanting to change is not enough. Understanding your thoughts is not enough. Writing powerful affirmations in a notebook is not enough if you don't translate that desire into a solid daily routine. Otherwise, your mind will take control again. Just as a body without training weakens, a mind without direction falls back into chaos, into doubt, into procrastination, into habits that keep you exactly where you are, no matter how many times you swear you've learned the lesson. Your mind is like a wild animal. If you don't set boundaries, it seeks to dominate you. If you don't bring it order, it imposes its own rhythm. And that rhythm, the automatic one, the one that activates when you're not present, is built on fear, doubt, guilt, and emotional impulses that pull you away from everything you truly want. That's why you need structure, both mental and physical. A design that sustains your transformation, even on the days when you don't feel like doing anything. That discipline is the foundation of freedom. I've seen men with immense potential waste it simply because they lacked a routine, because they lived improvising every day, trusting their emotions instead of their decisions. And the mind loves that weakness. It loves when you're unclear, because where there's no clarity, it fills the space with noise. Where there's no direction, it leads with shortcuts. Where there's no firm decision, it enforces its old system. That's why you need rituals, not as punishment or obsession, but as reminders, as anchors, as training. Write down what you'll do upon waking. Design your first hour as if it were sacred, because it is. That hour sets the tone for your entire day. Will you open your phone and consume noise, or will you root yourself in your identity, your purpose, your system? Your mind needs to be led by facts, not emotions, by small, consistent actions. That's what rewires your mental code. Consistency, not inspiration. If every day you do a little more of what's right and a little less of what's automatic, your mind begins to yield, begins to trust, begins to stop resisting. Not because the noise disappears, but because your structure becomes stronger than the noise. This is where you must act. Design your non-negotiable routine. 3 things you'll do every day, no matter what. Things that reflect the person you're becoming, that remind your mind who's in charge. Write them down. Commit to them. And if you fail one day, return the next without drama. Power doesn't lie in perfection. It lies in not abandoning the structure when you need it most. And before we continue, if this message resonates with you, if something within you knows it's time to take full control, I invite you to subscribe and turn on notifications. Here, you'll find the tools, the language, and the impulse your mind needs to never turn back. Tell me in the comments, what thought has been your greatest enemy so far? Write it, expose it, because when you bring it to light, you take away its power. And when fear loses its grip, your true leadership begins. The 5th step to mastering your mind is transforming your inner dialogue into a weapon of power, not an echo of your weaknesses. The most constant, influential, and dangerous conversation you have every day is the one you have with yourself. No one talks to you more than you do. No one judges you more harshly. No one has more access to your thoughts than you. And if that dialogue isn't elevated, clear, firm, and constructive, your mind becomes a daily factory of self-sabotage. Think about this. Every time you fail, what do you tell yourself? Every time you doubt, compare, or when things don't go as planned, what story do you create? That story, that internal monologue, defines your identity. Not the facts, not the results, but your interpretation of them. If you interpret your mistakes as proof that you can't, as evidence that you always repeat the same patterns, then your mind records it as law and acts accordingly. The key is to take conscious control of that dialogue, to not let your inner voice be inherited from the past, from figures who marked you, from fears you never questioned. Because if you don't edit that voice, it will edit you, with harshness, with judgment, with phrases disguised as realism that are really just defenses. It's better not to try. I'm not like others. That's not for me. That's just how I am. If you don't transform that voice, it becomes your greatest barrier. How do you change it? Not with empty phrases or cheap optimism, but with powerful language, repeated with intention. With affirmations that aren't just pretty words, but are tied to action. Don't say, I am successful, if you don't believe it yet. Say, today, I act like a successful person, with clarity, with strength, with discipline, because that you can prove, that you can live. Your mind needs coherence between what you say and what you do. When your internal dialogue aligns with your decisions, your entire system begins to synchronize. But if you speak like a failure, even while doing brave things, your subconscious won't register it, because language is the code with which you program your identity. That's why changing how you talk to yourself is urgent. Begin by writing down the phrases you repeat to yourself when you're in crisis, the harsh ones, the automatic ones. Then destroy them. Replace them with words that lift you, that push you forward, that remind you of who you are choosing to become. You don't have to shout them at the mirror, though you can if you wish, but you must repeat them daily. Write them in your journal, make them your phone wallpaper. Read them when you wake up and before you sleep. Because the language you hear the most is the one that shapes you the most. Remember, you are the narrator of your story, not your past, not your surroundings, not your mistakes. And the narrator holds more power than the protagonist, because the narrator can change the entire plot at any moment. If you control your dialogue, you control your destiny, because a well-spoken mind is a well-directed mind, and a well-directed mind knows no limits, only choices. The sixth step to mastering your mind is to design your environment as an extension of your purpose, not as a reflection of your past self. Your mind doesn't operate in a vacuum. It feeds on stimuli. It absorbs what it sees, what it hears, what it touches, what it smells, what it consumes every single day without you realizing it. And if your environment is cluttered, noisy, full of distractions, mediocre voices, toxic habits, and symbols of the past, your mind will not move forward, even if your intentions are pure. If the world around you doesn't support your intention, your subconscious cannot sustain your transformation. Few people understand this. Your physical and social environment is one of the strongest programmers of your mind. The people you speak to, the objects in your sight, the sounds that surround you, the places you visit, all of it builds a silent message, one your inner system records and repeats. And if that message says, "This is normal, this is enough, this is safe," then that is exactly what you will maintain, even if deep inside you crave more. So, if you truly wish to master your mind, thinking differently is not enough. You must live differently. And that begins with your immediate surroundings, your room, your desk, your phone, your circle. Ask yourself, does this reflect the person I want to become or the person I once was? Because every object, every contact, every habit carries symbolic weight. And if you don't choose them consciously, you'll end up surrounded by reminders of the version of you that you're trying to leave behind. Perform a ruthless cleansing. Remove what no longer represents your vision. Uninstall the apps that distract you. Delete the conversations that no longer build you. Clean your space as if you were preparing sacred ground for a new identity. Because that's exactly what you're doing. Don't underestimate it. An environment that is ordered, focused, and aligned with your purpose doesn't just support your progress, it makes it inevitable. Then, extend that cleansing to your human environment. Look around you. Who do you spend the most time with? What kinds of conversations fill your days? Do they lift you or drain you? Do they inspire you or reinforce your doubts? Because the voices you hear most often become the voices your mind imitates when you're alone. And if those voices are cynical, negative, or limiting, your inner world will echo them. Even if your goals are clear, if you surround yourself with mediocre energy, your subconscious will adjust to that level by inertia. So take radical decisions. You don't have to cut every tie abruptly, but you must create distance from what no longer adds value. And you must move closer, even virtually, to people, ideas, and environments that elevate you. Your mind needs evidence that the higher level you seek is real, reachable, and normal. That only happens when you see it, when you hear it, when you breathe it. Remember this: environment wins over will when willpower isn't protected. And if you want your mind to obey you, you must build a world that does not contradict it, a world that supports it, inspires it, and reminds it at every moment that you are no longer who you once were. You are who you choose to be, and your environment must rise to meet that choice. The seventh step to mastering your mind is to break the emotional bond with the identity you built out of pain. Because every one of us, without exception, has shaped parts of our personality as a reaction to suffering. Sometimes it was abandonment, humiliation, rejection, betrayal, failure, or comparison. And those wounds, instead of fading, turned into internal structures, into distrust, perfectionism, self-sabotage, dependency, hardness, or avoidance. Not because that's who you are, but because that's how you learned to protect yourself. Here lies the danger. Your mind has associated those defenses with survival. Every time you avoided pain, your brain read it as a victory, as proof that the pattern works, so it repeats it. And every repetition reinforces it until it becomes such a normal part of you that you can't tell the difference between protection and personality. You think you're cold, when in truth, you're someone who stopped trusting. You think you're lazy, when in truth, you're someone who learned not to waste energy on what seemed hopeless. You think you're incapable, when in truth, you were taught not to expect anything from yourself. And here comes the most powerful revelation. Those very parts you created to survive are now the ones keeping you from thriving. Because what once protected you now confines you. What once defended you now limits you. And your mind will keep operating from that same system until you confront it, until you tell it, "Thank you for bringing me this far, but I no longer need you to move forward." This is not a comfortable process. It's not about affirmations or quick motivation. It's about grief, inner grief. It's about facing the version of yourself who had no tools, honoring him without glorifying him, understanding that many of your past decisions didn't come from your essence, but from your wounds. And that wound only begins to heal when you stop identifying with it, when you stop acting as if you are still that unseen child, that mock teenager, that betrayed adult. Mental reprogramming requires renunciation, the renunciation of the version of you that feels safe in pain. Because even if that pain is uncomfortable, it's familiar. And your mind loves what's familiar, predictable, known. So every time you try to change, your subconscious triggers alarms. This isn't you. This feels strange. This won't work. But it's not that it doesn't work. It's that it makes your old self uncomfortable. And that's a good sign. Do this today. Write a letter to the person you once were. Thank him for his effort, his struggle, his endurance, and tell him that from now on, you take control. That you now choose from vision, not from pain. That your decisions are no longer based on what you fear losing, but on what you are ready to gain. Because when your mind understands, there's no longer a need to protect itself. It begins to open. It begins to let you act with greater clarity, flow, and intention. You stop responding to trauma and start responding to purpose. And that, right there, is the moment your true transformation begins. Not when you erase your past, but when you stop behaving as if you still live inside it. That is the freedom your mind craves. and only you can give it. That mastery of the mind requires letting go of the need for constant motivation and replacing it with the discipline of purpose. Because as long as you wait to feel ready to act, you remain a prisoner of your inner states. That invisible slavery keeps millions trapped in cycles of self-deception. They get inspired for a day, make a temporary change, and then fall back once the emotion fades. They haven't understood that real power doesn't come from feeling ready. It comes from moving even when you're not. Your mind was conditioned to seek pleasure and avoid discomfort, to choose what's easy, immediate, and familiar. And if you don't interrupt that pattern with decisions anchored in vision, it doesn't matter how many videos you watch, how many books you read, or how many promises you whisper to the mirror. The moment the emotion drops, and it always does, your mind will look for an excuse. And unless you're trained to act beyond your feelings, you'll fall into the same place again and again. That's why discipline is the language your subconscious understands. The mind doesn't reprogram through pretty words. It reprograms through repeated actions. When you make your bed, even though you don't want to, you're giving your system a command. When you work even without motivation, you're building inner respect. When everything in you says later, but you choose now, you become unstoppable. But this demands emotional maturity. It requires accepting that motivation is fleeting, that heavy days exist, that there will be times you won't want to do anything. And yet, you act, not from punishment or rigidity, but from commitment to the identity you chose to build. Because the man who acts only when he feels like it doesn't lead his life, he survives it. The one who acts with or without desire, with clarity or doubt, that's the one who transforms his reality. Keep it simple. Don't aim for heroic feats. Commit to the essential, but always fulfill it. If you decide to read 10 pages, read them even if you're tired. If you say you'll go to the gym, go, even if it's not your best workout. If you promise not to touch your phone before 10, keep that promise even if your hand itches for it. Each of these actions is a brick in the construction of your mental mastery. And with time, that structure becomes so strong that you no longer depend on motivation. Because your system moves on its own, habit replaces impulse, and you're no longer forcing yourself. You're flowing in the direction you designed. And when you reach that point, you'll realize something profound. The truly free man is not the one who does what he wants whenever he wants. It's the one who does what must be done, even when he doesn't want to. Because he no longer obeys the unstable mind. He serves a higher purpose. That man no longer negotiates with his excuses. He lets them speak alone, because his vision roars louder. His word is no longer a suggestion. It's a command. And that changes everything. The 9th step to mastering your mind is to change the way you perceive failure until it stops being a threat and becomes a tool. For as long as you associate mistakes with humiliation, loss, or pain, your mind will do everything it can to avoid them. And in that desperate attempt to never fail, you'll end up failing at the one thing that truly matters: moving forward. Avoiding mistakes at all costs means avoiding learning. And without learning, there is no evolution, only stagnation, beautifully disguised with excuses. The mind, conditioned by fear of error, becomes cautious, afraid to ask, afraid to act. It waits for the perfect moment, the perfect validation, the perfect certainty. But that perfection never comes. The path to success is never straight, never clear, always full of doubts, stumbles, and corrections. If you don't reprogram your relationship with failure, every mistake will seem like a sign that you're not worthy, not capable, not meant to continue. But that's not true. It's just the mind trying to protect itself at the cost of your future. I've seen people remain trapped for years in a gray zone, afraid to be seen, terrified of public failure, living small lives to avoid discomfort. What they don't understand, and what you must engrave in your soul today, is that every time you choose comfort over failure, you are choosing to remain in the same mental, emotional, and spiritual state. You are delaying your evolution, because failure doesn't stop you. It shapes you, refines you, trains you. Real transformation happens when you stop running from mistakes and begin to use them. When every time you fall, instead of hurting your self-esteem, you strike your old patterns, break them, correct them, and rise stronger. That's the difference between those who transform and those who merely survive. The ones who transform see failure as part of the plan, not as a signal to retreat. Do you know what gives you real power? Falling and not changing your vision. Failing and not lowering your standards. Making mistakes and still trusting yourself, because your mind begins to learn that failure is not death, that an error is not the end, it's instruction. When that truth settles deep in your being, you become faster, freer, more alive. You no longer carry the burden of getting it right the first time. You're no longer paralyzed by not knowing, because you understand that moving forward clumsily is far more powerful than standing still gracefully. Do this now. Redefine your story with failure. Think of your greatest mistake, the one that still brings you shame or anger, and change its meaning. Write it as training, as a turning point, as the beginning of awareness. Because when you rewrite your errors, you stop fearing them. And when you stop fearing them, you free yourself from the inner brakes that hold you back. Your mind doesn't need perfection. It needs permission. Permission to fail and keep going. You must teach it through action that failure isn't something to avoid. It's something you master, use, and even thank. Because every fall, when rightly understood, makes you wiser, stronger, and freer. And that kind of mental freedom is priceless. The 10th and final step, the most powerful, the most transformative, and the hardest to accept, is realizing that no one is coming to save you except yourself. No matter how many books you read, how many videos you watch, or how much advice you collect, if you don't decide to rise and become the absolute leader of your mind, nothing will ever change. The enemy is no longer outside. It's not time, not your environment, not your past. It's that part of you still waiting for permission, for a sign, for a guarantee, for external motivation to finally start living fully. Brilliant minds waste their potential for one simple reason. They kept acting as if they had endless time, as if the perfect moment was just around the corner, as if one day their mind would magically align with their purpose. But it never happens that way, because the mind doesn't align by chance. It's trained, disciplined, and forged through daily commitment to a vision so clear, so powerful, so urgent that it no longer allows excuses, only decisions. This is the moment when you decide whether to remain a slave to your conditioned thoughts or become the architect of your consciousness. You don't need your doubts to disappear. You just need to act despite them. You don't need to silence every negative voice. You only need to stop obeying them. You don't need to become someone else. You simply need to release everything that you are not. And it all begins with this truth. You already know what to do. You don't need more clarity. You need courage. Courage to keep your word. Courage to break with comfort. Courage to make discomfort your new home. Because the mind isn't reshaped in moments of peace. It is forged in the tension between who you were and who you have decided to become. Don't wait to feel ready. The ready man is the one who acts before he is. Don't wait to have the energy. The energetic man is the one who acts even when he doesn't. Don't wait for your mind to align magically. It aligns when you lead, not when you surrender. Today is the day you look your mind in the eye and say, I no longer fear you. I no longer follow you. I no longer believe you. Because now I lead. Now I choose which thoughts to feed, which habits to sustain, which environment to allow, which words to repeat, which emotions to cultivate, and which vision to defend. And that decision, repeated daily, is what turns a reactive mind into an unstoppable one. You don't need more time. You don't need another opportunity. You just need to start with what you have, where you are, without permission, without guarantees, but with an unshakable certainty that within you lies a force 1,000 times greater than any doubt. And when that force awakens, no mind can stop you, no past can limit you, and no future will ever be too big, because the one who masters his mind masters his destiny. And that man, if you choose him, can be you, now, today, here.